Before we start the video, I want to make it clear that I consider myself an average Sekiro player, so don't expect any elite gameplay footage. I've wanted to dive back into this game for a long time. In fact, I haven't played Sekiro since its release in 2019. Ishin the Sword Saint and Allfather gave me all types of hell when I first played, and once I had completed the game, I really had no intention of going back. That is, until I finished Shadow of the Erdtree. I rebought Sekiro on Steam and surprisingly ran through the game after a painful acclimation period. I surprisingly beat Ishin on my first try and was now looking forward to getting all of the endings and then completing the different gauntlets because I was feeling fairly confident. A friend of mine said that instead of beating the base game for the Shura ending, why not play the Resurrection mod instead, which added new mini-bosses and made updates to existing bosses. I have seen videos of Resurrection and read that it was considered the easiest of the available mods and decided that it would be a good video idea. And who knows, if this video somehow does well, I'll give the other mods a go and provide my experience on them as well. So let's ask the question. Could your average player beat Sekiro Resurrection? The answer is yes, but it is a humbling experience. First off, this mod is awesome. It adds a number of new combat mechanics such as the recoil counter, which allows the player to deflect immense strikes from enemies and immediately follow up with an attack. If you want to do consistent posture damage against bosses, being able to utilize the recoil counter effectively is a requirement. Now you'll notice that when you first start areas, they're now just filled with enemies. There are even new enemies that you didn't see before in the base game, such as the Imperial Rats, and these were added to the opening areas. This forced me to become proficient in parrying immediately. I noticed that I was taking far more posture damage than in the base game, and against most enemies, that's fine. But against mini bosses or bosses, it can be a serious point of stress. Making my way to the Ashina Outskirts, I ran into an old friend, the Chained Ogre, and he's a tad bit more aggressive here than in the base game, and by that, I mean he is coming at you full throttle. I had to cheese this fight to win, and I'm not ashamed to say that because he got caught up on a ledge and was very committed to trying to grab and drop kick me. It took a little while to whittle down his health, but after a few minutes and a lot of jump attacks, he was finally finished. For some reason, he just won't follow me down. He's gotten so aggressive in his second phase that he's just kicking at me and just swinging wildly, but he just constantly keeps grabbing. It's like non-stop, and I'm not gonna lie to anyone. I'm not dealing with this shit. Just please go down. I gotta end this, man. Finally. Moving on, I found General Tenzin, and at this point I was curious to see what changes were made to some of the elite enemies. This little bastard baited me while trying to restore his posture, which is something I had noticed other elite enemies do quite often in the mod. This move, I think, killed me twice, but it never frustrated me because every enemy that executed a grab, and it didn't matter who they were, ended up catching me because my brain, for whatever reason, cannot comprehend that I need to dash backwards to get out of range. But I found this fight to be really fun, and it was nice to see what new combo strings were implemented for mid-bosses because there are quite a few. After successfully downing Tenzin, I made my way past the serpent, who seemed very happy to see me. He's just throwing a tantrum because we have to part. Next up,
My name is Gyoubu.
he is still very enthusiastic, and next time I'll let him finish his name. Gyoubu is a bit more aggressive in this fight. In the base game, you can bait him into a 3-hit combo pretty consistently, but here, he is just launching that spear at you. There are a few moments of reprieve, but the pressure overall is pretty constant. I like the fact that the mod threw a few new wrinkles into his attacks, but he is still the same Gyoubu. It took me 3 tries to down him, and this is where I noticed that if you don't land a recoil counter, these fights can go on for a little bit too long. Sometimes, these combos can really push you into a corner, and I'll talk about that more at the end. Regardless, I think this is a massive upgrade for this fight, and I'm glad for Gyoubu because he is usually getting bullied. Someone's gonna watch this and say, but there's an opening here and there. I'm like, brother, where is it? Where is the openings, man? I don't have anything. It's a new game. That looks so weird. This is a far better fight than the original. I really like it. Too bad he's gotta die. The next fight was with Lady Butterfly, but before then, I decided to run around and see what's new with Hirata Estate. I found 4 mid-bosses. 2 of them are Imperial Rats. One of them you'll see almost immediately on the bridge. Really easy to bait. The other one, not so much. Dude. I'm not doing this with you. Skip, skip, skip. The other 2 mid-bosses are the same. The Shinobi Hunter had no noticeable changes that I can think of. He was really easy to beat. In fact, I expected that there would be more enemies because the mod tends to throw in a bunch of them with the mid-bosses, but this area was pretty much the same. Now, good old Juzo has the same skill set, but there are more enemies in the area. But luckily, you have another NPC to assist you, and with those 2 together, they can do devastating damage. I killed everyone in the area, de-aggro Juzo, and then let the NPCs do the fighting while I got in a couple pot shots here and there. Easy peasy. With that out of the way, we move on to Lady Butterfly. And this is probably one of my favorite fights in the base game because it really teaches you the benefits of parrying, and I think that she has gotten a nice upgrade here in Resurrection. This fight is awesome, and the second phase is practically perfect to me. Instead of summoning spirit mobs, Lady Butterfly gets a spirit double. This is where you're also going to learn that just because you can successfully counter an unblockable move, it does not mean you get a free follow-up. After her spin attack, she follows through with an upward slash which can do big damage if you do not guard. In her second phase, almost every major attack throws out her double, and because you are probably at low health and stubborn like me, you are probably going to get downed really quick. Like the base game though, she takes high posture damage. So the second phase is actually pretty easy as long as you're not getting greedy and you take the time to learn. I honestly would rather have this phase because it's far more engaging and can be completed without the assistance of a snap seed. I thought I got the guard there, that's fine. Got really lucky. She has like no posture left. Please just come back and do a chain combo so we can end this. That's not the one I wanted. Oh my god, I'm so bad. There it is. Not bad, all things considered. I think this was a really, really fun fight. That's 2 bosses down, and now we move to Ashina Castle. The biggest change for Ashina Castle can be found on the rooftops, but first, let's talk about the other mid-bosses. The Brazen Bull is basically the same fight as before, but I feel like the attacks were easier to counter, and I was able to successfully down the poor fella on my first try. For some reason, I still feel bad for killing this enemy every time I encounter it. It's just a really sad fight if you think about it. Shikibu, one of the 7 Ashina Spears, is still, unsurprisingly, a pain in the ass. He is far more aggressive, does a ton of posture damage, and like General Tenzin, really wants to bait you into one of those unblockable throws. This is probably the toughest mid-boss fight in this area, and the marksman on the roof makes it even harder. If you happen to go the indirect route, there's a nice gentleman who waits inside, waiting to alarm everyone in the area. Kill them immediately, head to the roof, down the marksman, and then it's a one-on-one. The fight is still tough, but manageable now that the marksman is gone. In regard to the rooftops, the enemy count here has doubled, they're far more aggressive, and some of them like to explode. But here is where you will fight the Kamikaze Raven. This is not a hard fight by any means, but it is awesome. Immediately clear the area after landing the first killing blow, because he will explode and that damage will kill you. It was a nice surprise, but the rest of the fight was super easy. Please let me breathe. Finally got him. Oh! What the fuck was that? What is that move? No, you don't. Alright. That might have been the best mid-boss so far. The interior of Ashina Castle largely remains the same. There are Tengu hiding in the attic, and one even tries to get the jump on you when you head into the secret room. He blew up, though, before he even saw me, so I guess 0 points for trying and 10 points for enthusiasm. As you make your way up, you'll once again encounter Jinsuke Saze, who I still believe is relatively easy to take down, but this time around, he has a far more fleshed out moveset and will devastate you if you are not ready. This fight took a few tries, but I really enjoyed the fight, and I'm really glad that they gave him a really cool combo set instead of just being 2 slashes, back up, 2 slashes, back up, and then he's done. Once he's done and dusted, however, it's time for good old Genichiro. So far, Resurrection has been difficult, but I think it's been far more enjoyable than the base game. I think your average player can get here with some minor headaches. But I do believe that Geni is going to act as the wall once again. This fight really requires the player to really lock in and basically forget the rhythm of the original fight. If you do not land a recoil counter, he is going to continue his combo until he just lands a firm strike on you. He is relentless at times, and because your posture is not high by the time you arrive at this fight, this is an encounter in which if you are not aggressive, you will die. I cannot tell you how many times I got baited into that damn throwing animation because I firmly believed he was going to thrust. That was just my brain going back to the original fight. Once I got the throw animation down, I just went in for the punish because you can end up doing some good old posture damage. As Ishin would say, hesitation is defeat. It took me around 30 minutes to get to his third phase, and by that time, it was a wrap. I just didn't have any healing gourds at this point, and I had noticed that he was just melting my posture bar. After 45 minutes, I was able to return and kind of coast through his first 2 phases, and for some reason, I absolutely locked in and destroyed his third phase. Lucky? Very lucky. How did I not get the counter there? Nailed it! You are so fucked now. Holy shit. What a fight. I don't know if there's anything more satisfying than countering the Sakura dance imbued with lightning, but I was incredibly hyped when I pulled this off. And at this point, I just wanted to embarrass him a bit, and that's exactly what I did in the third phase. With Genichiro down, I thought it would be a bit of a cakewalk until I faced the Guardian Ape. I was dead wrong. For those who remember, the Armored Warrior is a bit of a joke in the base game. Basically, You parry until you kick him off. As a father, I empathize with this man. He is fighting for his child. In the Resurrection mod, however, I spit on his grave. I curse his son. I fucking hate this fight. This fight, for whatever reason, was just such a problem for me. I was in Discord with a few friends, and they had noticed I had gone silent because I could not believe that this armored asshole was giving me such a hard time. He can break your posture so fast, and that second phase speed is insane. If you cannot perfectly parry, you will die. There are little openings unless you use firecrackers. This dude just annoyed me to no end, and I was honestly relieved to watch him fall. This fight, to me, just sucked because the whole Senpo Temple area is just a mad dash to the end. Yes, there are more enemies and mid-bosses, but those can be easily avoided or beaten. Even the Sunken Valley, to me, was a breeze, but the Armored Warrior was a nightmare, and quite possibly the hardest boss in the mod for me to fight at this point. It was just the posture damage, well, that and how insanely quick he was when he went to cover long distances. I was shocked by the reach of his swings and just how quickly he was melting my health bar. Anyway, after Senpo Temple and the Sunken Valley, it was time for the Guardian Ape. Now, I've always felt like this was the first Souls-like boss in Sekiro. The first phase was always poke and run tactics for me because my brain will not believe that I can parry those hands, and the base game allowed for some pretty big attack windows that the player could take advantage of. That is not the case here. This damn dirty ape is so aggressive and loves to throw shit at you that you really have to pick your spots, and this first phase took me around 10 tries. And that was primarily because I couldn't just figure out where the openings were. I was surprised at his accuracy while throwing shit and at how quickly he could do that second throw. Seriously, it was insane because it's unexpected and can do really high damage. So my strategy was essentially bait, get my shots in, and then prep myself mentally for the second phase. I expected something vastly different. Instead, Headless Ape is just more aggressive than usual and honestly really easy to down. I finished this phase pretty quickly, but did almost die because of that cursed screen. Once the Guardian Ape was down, all that was left was him and his girlfriend, the fake temple monk, and then lastly, Emma and Ishin. The 2v1 fight was really easy. It only took 2 tries, but by that point, I was really confident that I could close out the Shura ending, and I was wondering what was going to be the roadblock if there was going to be one. The fake temple monk wasn't too difficult, but he could still go fuck himself. I was expecting a bit of a parry fest, which is what it was, and while I finished it in 2 attempts, this fight was really long, and the combos just did not stop. I'm going to mention this once again, but the fight really does bring up the one big issue as it pertains to boss balance, because giving them more moves is cool because you are capable of blocking, parrying, and interrupting, but getting knocked into a wall when the camera is just losing its shit is not fun. I'm just saying. Let me get a swing in. Holy shit, please. That was the longest combo I think I've seen so far in this game. I got pushed into the corner, and the camera's now my enemy. That's great. He hasn't done that once the entire time. Why now? There's going to be some comment that's going to say, why didn't you use the confetti? I know. I'm just dumb. What the fuck was that? Oh, that fight took way too long, man. Please, no random second phase, please. With the fake temple monk gone, it was time for the Shura showdown. It took me 3 attempts. It was honestly probably the easiest part of this mod. I have never achieved this ending before, and I've had people tell me that Ishin Ashina is no joke. And while I expected this to be really difficult, it was pretty simple. Ishin has a lot of openings, and while I felt bad for beating Emma, because, you know, the only real threat in her moveset is the throw, and it's pretty easy to counter, but I'm very dumb, so I got thrown practically every time. Or did I do it on purpose? But anyway, Ishin, however, is a pretty forgiving fight. Strangely, there was no punishing a reversal like Genichiro or Lady Butterfly, and to me, that was pretty surprising and also kind of disappointing. I had expected that there was going to be some new tactic that I had to plan for, so I really didn't follow up on punishes because I thought that they would be easily countered. But in the second phase, I just kind of backed Ishin down, hit him with the Mortal Blade a bunch until he finally fought back, but by that time, he had literally no posture left and he went down like a sack of potatoes. And then I looked at his corpse and said, the future is now, old man. Now, while I feel empty inside after decimating those two, mostly Emma, I did go and load up my other save to see how the other bosses like Owl Father, Ishin the Sword Saint, and the Demon of Hatred. And I have to say, get the fuck out of here with this. Owl Father has an insanely long combo string, and it will push you into the wall if you aren't careful. And I'm talking really, really long. He just kind of went on forever with one of these attacks, and it was honestly mind-blowing to see, but also really frustrating once I got backed into a wall. Now, I think that the fight was really cool looking, but as I've talked about before in the video, most of these arenas, they're walled off, and the camera will become your enemy in these moments because you can't see shit when you get backed into a corner, and it can be intensely frustrating to constantly parry with little to no openings. I get the whole get good thing, but there's a level of excess here that can make these fights frustrating. I now understand why FromSoft didn't include extensive combos for bosses, because some arenas would eventually work against you. Ishin's fight, on the other hand, is more manageable, but there is a lot to learn. His attack patterns have changed, but it really felt like a lore-accurate fight. This dude is lightning quick and will punish you if you try to run. I'm going to honestly lab this fight because I wasn't frustrated with what was here. I was more intrigued about what the changes were from the base fight and how I was going to counter them. Now, I don't have any footage of the Demon of Hatred fight because I just cheesed him off the map. I'm not ashamed of that shit either. To wrap things up, I think the Resurrection mod is pretty great, and while I enjoyed that there are benefits being the new mid-bosses as you reward with new items and techniques, I will say that there were some frustrating aspects, like the fights not fitting the arena. That's pretty much like my only real beef. Now, as it pertains to the average gamer, the average Souls-like enjoyer, I think as long as you're okay with those headaches, and I mean that, like, you need to be okay with not being able to counter at points and being pushed into a corner and not being able to see. You're just kind of relying on your instincts, essentially. I think that the Resurrection mod is more than doable, at least for the Shura ending. I don't know if From Software pays attention to the modding community. I'm fairly certain that they do, but I really think that this is an example of what players would want from a New Game Plus experience. Instead of just kind of going back and forth and then same enemies, same weapons, all that stuff, I really think that throwing in new enemies, techniques, maybe a training dojo. I thought that was probably the best thing about the mod, honestly, is that you can kind of lab against certain enemies. And then making alterations to existing bosses is smart and it's well implemented here. Now, obviously, the Resurrection mod is not without its flaws, but it is fairly polished, and that's kind of surprising, honestly. And big shout out to the team who developed it. I think it's pretty great. I do wish, though, that some of the combo strings didn't make the camera so finicky, but I do like the fact that bosses are more aggressive, so you don't necessarily have to wait for them to come to you or you have to initiate the action. It is a lot of fun being aggressive in these fights. I may be late to the party, but the Resurrection mod was a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to getting the other endings. I don't play many mods in general, but playing through this made me want to try out other mods for not just Sekiro, but other Souls games. Let me know what your favorite mod is in the comments, because that is going to do it for this video. If you happen to like the content, please consider like, sharing, and subscribing. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I will talk to you next time.